I grabbed my fiancée's gym bag to wash her clothes and found 2 used condoms stuffed in a side pocket. She said she was too tired to go out. When I confronted her, the Friday everything snapped began like any other end-of-week burnout day, and I walked into it without a clue that my entire engagement was sitting on a landmine. I had been stuck at a corporate seminar that only ended early because the fire alarm kept malfunctioning, sending everyone out into the November cold twice in 1 hour. When they finally dismissed us, I felt this rare jolt of relief, the kind you get when you suddenly realize you've been clenching your jaw for weeks. I texted Tessa that I'd be home earlier than usual, but she didn't answer. That wasn't unusual. She often napped early after her workouts. Tessa had claimed she was too tired to go out, saying she was completely drained and planned to stay home all evening. The thought of a quiet night with her sounded comforting. I stopped by a grocery store for takeout and something small to surprise her. Nothing dramatic, just a tub of the strawberry ice cream she liked. When I got home, the living room lights were off. The only sound was the low hum of the heater. Her shoes were by the door, but the way they were angled made me think she'd rushed inside without caring where they landed. She did that only when she was irritated or upset. That tiny detail tugged at something inside me, but I shrugged it off and called her name softly. No answer. I found her asleep on the bed, curled up with a blanket around her shoulders. She looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. Something in that moment, the stillness, the perfect staging of exhaustion, felt rehearsed. But I shook it away. People get tired. Not everything is a mystery. I set the takeout on the counter and went into the bedroom to tidy things up, partly because I wanted her to feel cared for, partly because when she was tired, she left the place messy. Her gym bag lay on the floor next to the dresser, the zipper slightly open, crumpled clothes spilling out. The smell hit me faintly, sweat mixed with cheap deodorant, so I grabbed it to toss everything in the wash. I didn't expect to become a different person by the time I stood back up. The moment I unzipped the side pocket, my hand brushed something soft but firm under the cloth lining. I pulled it out instinctively. 2 paper towel-wrapped lumps, warm from the enclosed heat of the bag. My stomach went cold, and before I even opened the bundles, I already knew something was wrong. The smell confirmed it. 2 used condoms, stuffed into the pocket and forgotten there. And not ours. We never used condoms. We stopped years ago. My first reaction wasn't shock or rage. It was a strange, hollow pause. A moment where the brain freezes in a quiet place before it explodes. It felt like walking into your own house and seeing all the furniture moved an inch to the left, something tiny but deeply wrong. I stood still for what felt like minutes, the evidence burning in my hand. My mind didn't try to explain anything. It just gathered fragments. She's too tired to go out. She had a long workout. She didn't want dinner. She didn't answer the phone. She fell asleep instantly. One by one, all these normal things twisted into something sickening. I walked into the bedroom and turned on the light. She flinched like someone waking up mid-nightmare. Her eyes opened slowly, then sharpened when she saw me standing there with her gym bag. I said her name. Calm, steady, no theatrics. Her expression shifted so fast it nearly startled me. First confusion, then fear, then anger, sharp and defensive, like a dog caught with its teeth in the trash. She sat up slowly, trying to read the room. I held up the gym bag without a word. She stiffened. Her eyes darted to the door, the window, the bag, my face. Her breathing quickened. The panic wasn't subtle. She knew exactly what I had found without me saying a single thing. I placed the 2 paper-wrapped bundles on the bed beside her. She stared at them like they were live grenades. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She swallowed hard. The silence stretched. I could almost hear her brain scrambling to choose a story. When she finally spoke, her voice came out shaking with forced annoyance. She launched into an explanation so bizarre and sloppy that it immediately sank on contact. She claimed she accidentally picked up someone else's gym bag. She said she didn't notice the weight in the side pocket. She insisted she had simply grabbed the wrong one from a bench and brought it home. But the bag had her initials stitched on the strap. When I pointed that out, she switched tactics, claiming she cleaned a friend's locker area and those must have been left by someone else. I asked which friend. She stalled. She looked away. Her jaw clenched. She tried to steer the conversation into why I was invading her privacy, accusing me of mistrusting her, undermining her independence, policing her belongings. Every accusation was a shield. Not a single one addressed the condoms. The conflict escalated faster than I could process. She shot up from the bed, shoved the bag away, and shouted that she couldn't deal with this energy. She grabbed her hoodie and stormed toward the door barefoot, claiming she needed air. That was always her exit move, leave before things get too real. As she jerked her coat from the hook, something slid out of the pocket and hit the floor with a soft tap. A phone. Not her usual one. A sleek, New model I had never seen. No case. No stickers. No signs of use. Just pristine and locked. She froze, realizing she dropped it. Her eyes flicked from the phone to me with the panic of someone watching a clock hit zero. She lunged for it, but I reached it first. She demanded it back, her voice trembling between rage and desperation. The screen lit up. A message banner flashed. One line. From a man named Ryland. Tell him you're sick. He can't control you. Control. The irony tasted acidic. She grabbed for the phone again, but now she was shaking. Something inside her broke for a second. The facade, the anger, the arrogance. I saw pure fear. Not fear of being caught cheating. Fear of losing the narrative she had been managing for God knows how long. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move toward her. I just held the phone to my chest and asked who Ryland was. She didn't answer. She took a step back and ran out of the apartment without shoes. The silence she left behind felt poisonous. I stood there holding a stranger's message, the used condoms still sitting on the bed, the gym bag crumpled on the floor. Everything in the room looked exactly the same, but nothing felt the same. My pulse steadied as the shock began folding into something colder. Not rage, not grief. Something in between, a slow-burning clarity. I sat down and unlocked the phone with the simplest method possible. She had set the code to the same 4 numbers she used for everything else. That detail hit me harder than the condoms. It meant she never planned for this phone to be seen by me. She never imagined I would touch it. She didn't think she needed a different code because she never expected her double life to leak into mine. The message list opened instantly. Ryland wasn't a stranger. He was saved with heart emojis. Their most recent chat was full of plans, comments about last night, mentions of our place, and details that left no room for excuses. It felt like reading a script from a life I never knew she was acting in. She wasn't just cheating. She was living a parallel relationship. But that wasn't the part that shook me the most. What rattled me was the tone of the messages. She wasn't playing victim with him. She wasn't cautious. She wasn't quiet. She was bold, intense, confident, manipulative. She talked about me like I was a burden. She told him she stayed home because she needed to keep me calm for a while. She said she'd fake being sick if she had to. Everything about her exhaustion made sense now. She wasn't too tired to go out. She was too busy balancing the lies. Then another message came through. I'm outside your place. You said you'd be home. It wasn't from her. It was from Ryland. He was coming to the apartment. He was already close. I stared at the screen, adrenaline tightening my grip on the phone. Without thinking twice, I stepped closer to the window and saw a tall, athletic man pacing near the sidewalk, checking his phone. That moment felt unreal. He wasn't hidden. He wasn't a shadowy figure. He looked like someone who expected to see her walk out any second. My breath went sharp. Not from fear. From the sudden, chilling understanding that everything I thought I knew about my relationship was a puppet show version she performed when convenient. The doorbell rang. One sharp, confident chime. The doorbell echoed through the apartment like someone had struck a tuning fork against the walls. I stood still for a full breath, trying to understand the shape of the moment. I had Tessa's secret phone in my hand, the used condoms still lying on the bed, and the man she had been seeing, the man she apparently promised to meet, standing outside my home expecting to see her. There was no clean way to handle this. No polite version. No delayed conversation. Everything had crashed into the same second, and it demanded a direct response. My chest felt tight, but not with fear. It felt like something inside me finally snapped into focus. I wasn't the man being lied to anymore. I was the man standing in front of the truth. I opened the door. Ryland stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, the kind of guy who looked like he coached high school athletes on weekends. He froze when he saw me instead of her. His eyes scanned my face, searching for recognition, then confusion, then suspicion. You're Julian, he asked slowly, like he was testing the name. I didn't answer immediately. I stepped aside slightly and gestured for him to enter. The hallway air was cold behind him, and the contrast with the warm apartment made him hesitate. But curiosity overpowered caution, and he stepped inside. The moment he saw the gym bag on the floor and the room lights bright enough to show every detail, his face tightened. He didn't know exactly what he was looking at, but he knew the scene wasn't casual. There was a tension you could almost see between us, like static before lightning hits. I held up the second phone. It was enough. I didn't need to explain anything. He exhaled like he'd been punched in the ribs. The realization hit him hard. Harder than I expected. How long have you two? He asked, gesturing between me and the air, trying to find words he didn't want to say out loud. 3 years, I answered. Engaged for one. His mouth parted slightly. A long pause stretched between us until his throat tightened, and he muttered something under his breath. The kind of quiet, frustrated sound people make when they realize they've been made a fool in a way they never saw coming. He ran a hand through his hair, and looked around the apartment again, like everything was suddenly in a different language. She told me you were separated, he said. Said she was only staying here until she found a place. A bitter wave washed over me. There are lies people tell to protect themselves. Then there are lies that are engineered, crafted, to manage a double life. She had been running 3 relationships at the same time, each with its own customized narrative. She told me you're insecure, I replied flatly. And controlling. His eyes snapped to mine. For a second I thought he'd get defensive, but then a strange expression crossed his face, something like relief mixed with anger. She said the same about you, he muttered. Word for word. In that moment we were no longer opponents. We were 2 men standing in the wreckage of someone else's story. He noticed the 2 paper-wrapped bundles on the bed and frowned. Are those? Yes. He grimaced. No one prepares for a moment like that. There isn't a script for it. Before either of us could speak again, the phone in my hand buzzed sharply. Not from him. Not from me. From Brent, the 3rd man she'd been seeing. The message preview appeared. Is she still coming? We said 8. A slow, rolling silence filled the room. Ryland's eyebrows drew together sharply. Who the hell is Brent? Another message came through immediately, like Brent sensed tension. She left her jacket here last night. Tell her I've got it. This wasn't just cheating. This was structural deception. A rotating system she managed with precision, until tonight. Ryland took a step back, hands on his hips, staring at the ground. He looked like someone trying to make sense of an earthquake. If she told him she's single, he said slowly, then she's been saying different things to each of us. This isn't an accident. No, I said quietly. It's intentional. Everything inside the apartment suddenly felt small, like the walls were closing in. The phone buzzed again. Not Brent. Tessa. She sent a short voice message. I didn't play it. I didn't need to. Every muscle in my body knew what it would contain. Panic, control, damage control, a rehearsed mix of guilt and anger. I set the phone down and looked at Ryland. She's not coming back here tonight. He let out a humorless laugh. No kidding. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped closer and pointed at the used condoms. Those weren't mine, he said firmly. There was no defensiveness. No shame. Just a simple fact that widened the situation even more. I believed him instantly. His reaction was too raw to be faked. I already figured, I said. We stood there in a quiet, shared disgust, not toward each other but toward the mess we were dragged into. And then my own anger, which had been sitting quietly under the shock, finally shifted. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't loud. It was steady. A slow-burning realization that she didn't just cheat. She gambled with all of us. She manipulated 3 separate men like a card trick she thought she could keep shuffling forever. I grabbed my keys. Ryland frowned. Where are you going? She's on her way to meet Brent, I said. I'm done waiting for her to come home. He blinked, surprised by the directness of it. Then he picked up his jacket without hesitation. I'm coming. It wasn't a pact. It wasn't a plan. It was 2 men refusing to let someone else script the moment. We walked out together. The night air hit hard, the kind that feels crisp enough to sting. I checked the location from a recent food order she'd placed, a small Italian restaurant only 5 minutes away. A place she said she hated because the portions were tiny. Conveniently, she only hated it when she went with me. Ryland's jaw tightened when I told him. She took me there last month, he muttered. Said it was her little escape. We arrived in silence, both bracing for whatever version of her we were about to face. The restaurant had warm lights, soft music, and that cozy ambience people choose for anniversaries and romantic dinners. And there she was, sitting at a corner table with Brent. She wasn't curled over with guilt. She wasn't distressed. She wasn't thinking about us at all. She was laughing. Laughing freely. The kind of laugh she hadn't given me in months. Her hair was styled, her makeup freshly done, her posture perfect. She looked energized, alive, thrilled to be there. None of her exhaustion was real. Brent looked younger than both of us, a corporate type with 2 clean clothes and a watch that gleamed under the restaurant lights. He had no idea what kind of night he was about to walk into. I didn't hide. I didn't wait. I stepped directly into her line of sight. She saw me first. The laughter slipped off her face like a mask dropping in an empty room. Her hand froze mid-gesture. For a second, she didn't even breathe. Then her eyes darted to Ryland behind me, and something inside her collapsed. She wasn't just caught. She was surrounded. Brent looked between us, confused. Tessa? Who are they? Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The only sound was the quiet clinking of dishes from tables that suddenly turned suspiciously silent. Ryland stepped forward, not aggressively, just steadily. Tell him, he said. Tell him who we are. She shook her head in small, frantic motions, her eyes wet, but not from sorrow. From panic. From exposure. Brent repeated the question louder. Who are they? She broke. Not into tears. Into anger. She stood abruptly, knocking her water glass over. Liquid spilled across the table and dripped onto the floor. She grabbed her purse, shoved it against her chest, and hissed that she didn't owe any explanations to anyone. Then she pushed past us, her steps uneven, her breath quick and sharp. We followed her outside as Brent trailed behind, demanding answers. The confrontation spiraled instantly. Brent argued. Ryland confronted. I stood grounded but steady, forcing the truth into the open. Each lie she tried collapsed under the weight of the two men standing beside me. Then her purse slipped from her hands during the chaos, and something slid out onto the pavement. A prescription card, with a fourth man's name on it. Ryland froze. Brent stared. I felt the ground go still. The prescription card lay on the pavement like a dropped secret. It wasn't dramatic on its own, a small laminated rectangle, slightly bent at the edges, but the moment it appeared, everything stopped. Brent crouched down first. His fingers hovered above it before he finally picked it up and read the name aloud in a slow, steady voice that made the air feel heavier. Damon Harper, he said. None of us recognized the name. Not me, not Ryland, not Brent. But Tessa did. Her reaction was instant. She jerked forward, grabbed the card from his hand, and shoved it back into her purse so fast she nearly ripped the fabric. That wasn't supposed to be in there, she muttered under her breath. It wasn't loud, but it was loud enough. Brent's eyebrows shot up. Who is Damon? She didn't answer. She didn't even try. She clutched the purse to her chest like it was a life jacket, her knuckles white, her breathing sharp and quick. Sweat dotted her forehead, even though the night was cool. Ryland stepped closer, voice low and steady. You said you didn't have anyone else. You looked me in the eyes and said we were exclusive. She shook her head in wild little motions. He's no one. You're twisting everything. He's nothing. Nothing, Brent said. Then why are you carrying his insurance card? Her mouth opened, but her throat seized. She had an answer ready. I could see it forming, but she didn't know which version to tell. She had too many stories running at once, and the wires were crossing faster than she could separate them. Her entire structure of lies was buckling under its own weight. She finally blurted out something about helping a co-worker with paperwork, but even she heard how ridiculous it sounded. Brent's jaw tightened. Ryland let out a quiet breath through his nose, no longer shocked, just done. And then she snapped. Not in fear. In anger. You're all insane, she hissed, stepping back. This is harassment. I don't need to stand here and get interrogated by a bunch of insecure men. That word hit again, insecure. The same one she used to describe each of us in different ways, depending on what she needed. Her eyes darted to the parking lot entrance, as if calculating escape. She tightened her grip on her purse and spun on her heel. Her steps were quick, almost frantic. She reached her car and yanked the door handle like she expected it to grant her an immediate exit from the disaster unfolding around her. But the door didn't open. It was locked. She fumbled with her keys, muttering under her breath, her hands shaking so hard the keys jingled erratically. In that moment, something unexpected happened. Brent walked past us and stood a few feet from her, not aggressive, not shouting, just firmly blocking her from slamming the door in all our faces. He wasn't trying to trap her. He wanted answers. Tessa, he said, what exactly were you planning tonight? Because you told me we were building something real. You told me you were done with toxic relationships. You said you were tired of being lied to. Meanwhile, you were. She cut him off with a sharp, defensive cry. Stop making everything sound dramatic. I didn't do anything wrong. Ryland scoffed. Nothing wrong. You were dating all of us at the same time. She folded her arms and looked away, refusing to acknowledge anything. Her silence felt louder than yelling could ever be. Then the restaurant manager walked outside. He looked irritated, arms crossed, the universal posture of someone forced into a situation they didn't want to be in. He told us he got multiple complaints from diners about the shouting and asked us to either quiet down or move. Before any of us could respond, Tessa lashed out at him too, telling him he should mind his own business. He didn't appreciate that. He told her he'd call the police if the disturbance continued. Her face paled, not because of the argument, because of the police. Something about the threat hit her differently. Instead of backing down, she lunged into her car again, this time with enough force to make her purse slip from her shoulder and hit the ground. The contents spilled across the pavement, receipts, lip gloss, a tangled charger, and a thick envelope. The envelope slid several feet before stopping at my shoe. It was torn on one side, revealing a stack of unpaid notices. Insurance. Vehicle damage. A final warning letter that made my stomach tighten when I picked it up. The letter accused her of failing to respond to repeated contact attempts about a hit-and-run involving her car. The incident happened 2 weeks ago. She had been avoiding every call, every notice, every attempt to reach her. And the vehicle she hit? Parked. Empty. But significant damage. No wonder she panicked at the mention of police. I held up the letter. When were you planning to tell me about this? She didn't answer. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. She just stood there, jaw clenched tightly enough to tremble. Brent looked at me, then at the letter, then at her. Is this why you said you couldn't drive to my place last week? He asked. You said your car was making a weird noise. She snapped back quickly. It was. Ryland stepped forward. Or was it because you were hiding from insurance investigators? Her shoulders tensed. She tried to walk toward the car again, but we weren't standing in her way. She was blocked by the truth, not by us. Then she did the one thing none of us expected. She bolted. She ran across the parking lot barefoot, sprinting so fast the sound of her steps echoed off the pavement. It wasn't rational. It wasn't planned. It was pure panic. A trapped reaction. She crossed between parked cars and headed toward the sidewalk before anyone could catch up. We followed, not to chase her, but because watching someone sprint barefoot into the street after being exposed in front of 3 men and a growing crowd of restaurant patrons isn't normal behavior. A couple walking their dog froze as she sprinted past them. A driver honked as she darted across the entrance lane. She didn't look back. When she finally stopped, she leaned against the side of a grocery store across the plaza, chest heaving, hair sticking to her forehead. By the time we caught up, she looked less like someone who had been cornered and more like someone desperate to outrun the consequences. Her voice came out in short, sharp bursts. I can't deal with this. I'm done. I'm leaving. Leaving where? Ryland asked. She didn't answer. She slid down the wall and hid her face in her hands like she was trying to disappear behind her elbows. People walking out of the store slowed down, trying to understand whether they should intervene or keep moving. The entire scene was becoming public in a way none of us wanted. Ryland crouched near her, giving her space. Tessa, look at me, he said. If you tell us the truth, we walk away. All of us. But you have to stop lying. Her head snapped up. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying from regret. It was frustration, anger, rage at losing control. She jabbed a finger at him. You think you deserve the truth? You think any of you deserve explanations? Brent stepped in, voice low. We deserve closure. She scoffed with a shaky laugh. Closure? This isn't some movie. I don't owe anyone closure. I just needed time. Time for what? I asked. Her eyes flared at my voice. To figure out who I wanted. To figure out who was worth it. The gut punch wasn't in the words. It was in how easily she said them, like none of this was catastrophic, like she was picking dinner options and not destroying 3 people's lives. She pushed herself to her feet, brushed dirt from her knees, and tried to walk away again. But a police SUV pulled into the lot. Not for us. Just routine patrol. But she didn't know that. She froze again, not for self-preservation, but because she thought the SUV might be here for her. The officer rolled down the window, glanced at us, and asked if everything was okay. Tessa stiffened so visibly that even the officer noticed. Ma'am, he said, you look distressed. She swallowed hard. I'm fine. Her voice cracked. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you sure? Ryland spoke up immediately. We're just finishing a conversation. The officer nodded, still watching Tessa, then moved on. The SUV turned and exited the lot. The moment it left, her shoulders sagged in visible relief. That relief told us everything. She wasn't afraid of us. She was terrified of the consequences catching up. She wiped her face with her sleeve and whispered, I need to get out of here. Tessa stood in that parking lot like someone who had been hurled into cold water. Her breathing was uneven, shallow, and she glanced around in quick, sharp movements as if trying to locate a door that didn't exist. Ryland stepped back, Brent folded his arms, and I simply waited. There was nothing left to reveal. The truth was out in its full, ugly width. She tried to regain composure, smoothing her hair, adjusting her shirt, but her hands shook too much for any gesture to look controlled. Her eyes moved between the 3 of us with a mix of resentment and desperation, and her voice came out hoarse. I'm leaving, she said. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't need to stand here while you all gang up on me. You created this, Brent said. We didn't. She scoffed, anger rising again. I didn't do anything malicious. I was figuring things out. I needed options. You don't get to call me evil because I kept my choices open. Her ability to reframe everything was astonishing. It wasn't delusion. It was strategy. It was the same tactic she had used with each of us separately. Emotional pressure, deflection, reframing the narrative to place herself at the center as the misunderstood one. But now there were witnesses. Too many witnesses. Ryland spoke next. Choices don't include lying to every person involved. She threw him a sharp, dismissive glare. You're acting like I cheated on a marriage. I didn't know you monogamy. You told me you did, he answered calmly. That's the difference. She turned away, rubbing her temples, pacing in small circles to burn off the panic running through her. This isn't about morality. This is about you three needing to feel important. You're projecting. The mental gymnastics were exhausting. She was scrambling for a story she could control, but every version bounced off the wall of contradictions she built for herself. I finally stepped forward. Tessa, I said, you told me you were exhausted, that you couldn't move, that you needed rest. Meanwhile, you went out with him. I nodded toward Brent, after texting him that you were finally free of toxicity. You told Ryland you'd sneak out after I fell asleep. You told me you were committed. None of this is projection. These are your actions. She froze, jaw tightening. You're twisting everything. No, I said. You're caught. For the first time all night, she didn't have a response. Not a lie, not an excuse, not an attack. Her silence wasn't acceptance, it was calculation. But the night wasn't done with her. A loud honk came from behind us. A car pulled in sharply and parked near the grocery store. A woman stepped out carrying 2 bags. She stared directly at Tessa, recognition settling in. Hey, she called out. Are you Tessa Caldwell? Tessa's eyes widened. She shook her head so fast her hair whipped across her face. No, you have the wrong person. The woman frowned. Really? Because you look exactly like the woman who clipped my parked car 2 weeks ago and drove off. Tessa's knees nearly buckled. Brent closed his eyes slowly. Ryland whispered something under his breath. I felt a hollow sinking inside my stomach, not from sadness, but disbelief that she truly thought none of this would catch up. The woman walked closer, adjusting the grocery bags on her arm. I didn't have your plate at first, she said, but someone from the store's CCTV sent it to me. Insurance has been calling you nonstop. The investigator even asked me if I had seen you around town. And now here you are. Tessa's voice cracked. I was going to handle it. When? The woman asked. After I filed the police report again. A small crowd had begun forming at a distance. People love spectacle, especially when they sense a story unraveling. Tessa looked at them, then at us, and then at the woman. Her face warped between humiliation and rage. I'm not doing this, she said loudly. I didn't mean to hit your stupid car. I panicked. That's all. You drove off, the woman replied sharply. That's not panic. That's running. Tessa's eyes flashed with indignation. Why is everyone attacking me tonight? Because you're finally out of excuses, Ryland said. She shot him a venomous look, then spun toward the woman. You know what? Fine. Do whatever you want. Call whoever you want. I'm done apologizing. You haven't apologized once, the woman answered. Tessa glared at all of us, then swung her purse over her shoulder, forgetting that half its contents were still lying on the pavement. She walked toward her car, head high, back rigid, trying to salvage some dignity from a situation where she had none. But when she reached the door and pulled the handle, she realized she didn't have her keys. They were still on the ground, tangled in her spilled belongings. She exhaled through her nose, bent down, and started gathering her items with trembling hands. The moment she picked up the insurance letters, she gripped them so tightly the paper wrinkled. They were physical proof that her entire private world, the one she'd thought she could juggle indefinitely, had finally shattered. She attempted to unlock the car again, but her key fob didn't respond. I heard her mutter something low and harsh. Then she pried the door open manually, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine with jerky movements. Before she drove away, she looked at me, not with remorse or sadness, but with hostility, the kind that comes from a person who refuses to accept consequences. Then she sped off, tires screeching against the asphalt. When the noise faded, the night felt unnervingly quiet. The 3 of us stood there, each absorbing our part of the mess. Brent looked like someone who'd just walked out of a burning building. Ryland looked drained, but steady. I felt strangely calm, the kind of calm that comes not from acceptance, but from clarity. Brent shook his head. I don't know how I didn't see any of this. Ryland let out a breath. She kept us all isolated. It was intentional. They both looked at me then, waiting for something. Maybe anger, maybe sadness, maybe the next step. But I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel empty. I felt done. We're finished, I said simply. That's all we need to agree on. They nodded. No dramatic speeches. No forced closure. Just quiet acknowledgement that we had all been dragged through the same fire. We parted ways in the parking lot. No promises to stay in touch. No lingering conversation. And I drove home with a clarity that felt strangely new. The apartment looked different when I walked in. Empty in a peaceful way. Like a storm had finally passed through. I began gathering her things immediately, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Clothes, toiletries, shoes, her favorite perfumes, notebooks, jewelry, anything she'd left scattered in drawers. I placed everything into suitcases and set them by the door. Her absence felt like the first breath after surfacing from deep water. The next morning, the messages started pouring in. First a long paragraph demanding I meet with her face-to-face like adults. Then 5 voice notes full of stress, insisting she never meant to hurt anyone. Then a string of messages blaming me for provoking a public scene. Then another turning the blame on Brent and Ryland. Then apologies mixed with threats. Then self-pity. Then anger. Then guilt. Then silence. Then a new number texting. Please. It's urgent. I didn't respond to any of it. By noon, she was at the apartment door banging like she owned the place. I didn't answer. She screamed for several minutes, alternating between demanding to be let in and crying loudly enough for neighbors to peek through their blinds. Eventually she left, probably realizing I had already packed everything. That afternoon, I changed the locks. Not out of anger, but because she had already shown what she was capable of when cornered. Safety comes before sentiment. Later that week, consequences began landing on her from every direction.